The mining station on Kepler 442b was supposed to be humanity's greatest achievement. Marcus Chen pressed his calloused hand against the cold metal wall, feeling the vibrations of the drill cores deep beneath the surface. For 3 years, he had worked here alongside 200 other humans, extracting rare minerals that Earth desperately needed. Now, he was alone. The attack had come without warning. The Zarathi fleet appeared in the system like shadows materializing from empty space. Their ships were sleek, organic things that moved with predatory grace. Within hours, they had disabled the station's defenses and begun their systematic hunt. Marcus remembered the screams, the way his fellow miners had tried to fight back with mining tools against beings that moved like liquid metal. The Zarathi were tall, serpentine creatures with multiple arms and faces that shifted like kaleidoscopes. They didn't just kill, they collected. Each human they caught was paralyzed and taken aboard their ships for purposes Marcus didn't want to imagine. He had survived by pure chance. When the attack began, he was deep in the mines, investigating an unusual energy reading the scanners had picked up. The layers of rock and the strange mineral deposits had hidden him from their initial scans. By the time he emerged, the station was a tomb. For 2 weeks, Marcus had lived like a ghost in his own home. He ate cold rations, afraid to use any equipment that might generate a heat signature. He slept in storage closets, moving every few hours. The Zarathi patrols came regularly, their clicking language echoing through empty corridors as they searched for survivors they somehow knew were there. The morning everything changed started like any other day in his nightmare. Marcus was creeping through the maintenance tunnels when he heard them coming. This patrol was different. They moved with purpose, heading straight for his location. Someone or something had given him away. He ran, but there was nowhere to go. The station was a closed system, and the Zarathi had disabled all the escape pods. His feet pounded against the metal grating as he sprinted through sections he barely recognized anymore. Behind him, the clicking grew louder, accompanied by the whir of their hunting drones. Marcus burst into the old observation deck, a large room with reinforced windows looking out at the alien landscape. The binary suns were rising, casting strange shadows across the rust-colored rocks. He spun around, looking for another exit, but they had him surrounded. 3 Zarathi entered the room, their forms shifting and rippling. The one in the center was larger than the others, its multiple eyes focusing on Marcus with predatory interest. It spoke, and somehow Marcus understood. The words formed in his mind like ice crystals. "Last of your kind on this world," it said. "You have evaded us impressively. But the hunt ends now." Marcus backed against the window, his hand finding the plasma cutter at his belt. It was a mining tool, not a weapon, but it was all he had. "Stay back," he said, knowing how futile it sounded. The lead Zarathi made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species fights even when hope is extinguished. Fascinating. You will make an interesting addition to our collection." They moved forward in perfect synchronization. Marcus activated the plasma cutter, its blue flame springing to life. He swung it wildly, forcing them to dodge, but he knew he was only delaying the inevitable. One of them produced a device that looked like a crystalline rod. "This will not harm you," the leader said. "Merely remove your ability to resist." The rod pulsed with violet light. Marcus tried to dodge, but the energy washed over him like a wave. Instantly, his vision began to blur. Colors faded to gray, then to black. He could still feel, still hear, but his eyes were useless now. The plasma cutter fell from nerveless fingers. "Blind, but alive," the Zarathi said. "Your other senses will heighten in time. You will learn to appreciate existence in new ways in our preservation chambers." Marcus fell to his knees, hands stretched out in front of him. The darkness was absolute. He could hear them approaching, their strange feet clicking against the floor. This was how it would end. Humanity's last free member on Kepler 442b, reduced to a blind specimen in an alien zoo. But then he heard something else, a vibration through the floor, different from the Zarathi movements. It was rhythmic, powerful, and growing stronger. The air in the room changed, becoming charged with static electricity. The Zarathi noticed it too. Their clicking language became rapid, alarmed. Marcus heard them moving, no longer focused on him. One of them made a sound he had never heard before. It sounded like fear. The observation window exploded inward. Marcus felt the shower of reinforced glass, the sudden rush of the planet's thin atmosphere. But mixed with it was heat, incredible heat, and the smell of ozone and something else, something ancient. A roar shook the entire station. It was a sound that bypassed the ears and went straight to the primitive parts of the brain, the parts that remembered when humans were prey animals cowering in caves. But somehow, Marcus felt no fear. The roar was not directed at him. He heard the Zarathi weapons firing, energy beams sizzling through the air. Each shot was answered by that terrible roar and the sound of something massive moving through the observation deck. The floor shook with each step. Marcus pressed himself against the wall, trying to make sense of what was happening through sound alone. A Zarathi screamed. It was a high-pitched, mechanical sound that cut off abruptly. Another tried to run, its clicking feet rapid against the floor, but something caught it. Marcus heard the crunch of exotic armor being crushed like paper. The lead Zarathi was speaking rapidly in its own language now, all pretense of calm superiority gone. It said one word that Marcus did understand, a word that made no sense in this context. Dragon. The heat intensified. Marcus felt it wash over him in waves. Whatever was in the room with them radiated warmth like a furnace. He could hear breathing now, deep and measured, like bellows in an ancient forge. The last Zarathi was backing away, its movements frantic. Impossible, it said in Marcus's mind. Your kind has no such guardians. The records were clear. Humans are alone. A new voice spoke then. It was deep, resonating through the floor and walls as much as through the air. It spoke in a language Marcus didn't recognize, but somehow he understood it perfectly, as if the meaning was being carved directly into his consciousness. Records lie. Conquerors assume. The children of Earth were never alone. The Zarathi fired its weapon. Marcus heard the energy beam, felt the heat of its passage. Then he heard something else. Laughter. Deep, rumbling laughter that made the damaged window frames rattle. You would burn the scales of stars, the voice said. Little serpent, you know nothing of fire? What happened next? Marcus could only understand in fragments. There was light so intense he could see it even through his blindness, a red glow that penetrated his darkened vision. The Zarathi shrieked once, a sound of absolute terror. And then there was silence, except for that deep, rhythmic breathing. Marcus stayed pressed against the wall, afraid to move. He could feel the presence in the room, massive and patient. The heat was less oppressive now, more like standing near a campfire than a blast furnace. When it spoke again, the voice was gentler, though no less powerful. Marcus Chen, last human of Kepler 442b. Do you know what you uncovered in the deep mines? Marcus found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. An energy signature. The readings were like nothing we'd seen before. Not energy, the voice corrected. A sleeping place. A watch post. Your kind's excavations woke me from a very long sleep. What are you? Marcus asked. There was movement, slow and deliberate. The floor trembled with each step as whatever it was came closer. Marcus could feel its presence looming over him, ancient and impossibly powerful. I am what your ancestors called dragon, what your myths remembered when history forgot. We made a promise long ago to the first humans who looked up at the stars with wonder. Wherever humanity's children would go in the vast dark, we would follow. Wherever they would build, we would watch. Hidden, sleeping, waiting for the day when watching was not enough. Marcus's mind reeled. Dragons were mythology, fantasy. But then again, a month ago, he would have said the same about alien invasions. Why didn't you help sooner? Why did you let them kill everyone? The dragon's sigh was like wind through a canyon. The sleep is deep, the waking is slow. By the time I stirred, by the time I understood what was happening, you were all that remained. For this failure, I carry shame that will last eons. But you still live, Marcus Chen, and while one human draws breath, the promise holds. I'm blind, Marcus said bitterly. They took my sight. I'm useless now. The Zarathi take eyes because they believe vision is power, the dragon said. They are wrong. You will see again in time. My kind has ways of healing that your science does not yet understand. But first, there is work to be done. Work? Marcus asked. The Zarathi did not come alone. Their harvest fleet waits in orbit, filled with humans from this world and others. They believe their collection is complete. They are wrong. The dragon's voice hardened, becoming something that made the air itself feel sharp. They forgot that every hunt can become a rescue. Every predator can become prey. Marcus felt something touch his hand. It was warm, scaled, but gentle. A claw the size of his entire arm carefully helped him to his feet. I don't understand. You're going to fight their entire fleet? Alone? That rumbling laughter again. Alone? No, Marcus Chen. Did you think there was only one of us? One sleeping guardian for all of humanity's worlds? The dragon moved toward the shattered observation window. We are waking, all of us, across every planet where humans have planted their flags and built their homes. The Zarathi wanted to collect humanity. Instead, they have collected our attention. The implications staggered Marcus. How many of you are there? Enough, the dragon said simply. We are not numerous, but we are sufficient. And we have waited so very long for someone to be foolish enough to threaten our charges. Marcus heard massive wings unfurling, felt the rush of displaced air. The dragon was preparing to leave, to take the fight to the stars. But a thought occurred to him. Wait. Why reveal yourselves now? You could have stayed hidden. The dragon paused. When it spoke again, there was something almost sad in its voice. Because hiding means watching children die. Because sleeping means waking to empty homes. Because a promise kept in shadow is half a promise broken. The Zarathi have forced our hand, but perhaps it is time. Humanity has grown. You have taken your first steps into the greater universe. You have learned that it can be cruel. Now you will learn that you have never walked alone. Will I see you again? Marcus asked. You will see many things again, Marcus Chen. But first, find the emergency shelter in sub-level 7. Seal yourself inside. What comes next will not be gentle, and the station's atmosphere will not hold. When it is safe, we will come for you. Marcus nodded, then realized the dragon might not see it in the darkness. But the creature seemed to understand anyway. He heard it move through the shattered window, heard the impossible sound of wings catching air that should have been too thin to provide lift. One more thing, the dragon called back. Your name. Do you know its meaning? It's just a name, Marcus said. Chen. In the old tongue, it means dawn. You are well named, last human of Kepler 442b, for you have lived to see the dawn of a new age. With a roar that shook dust from the ceiling, the dragon launched itself into the rust-colored sky. Marcus stood in the darkness for a moment, listening to the sound of wings fading into the distance. Then, carefully, he began feeling his way along the wall, sub-level 7. He had work to do. As he navigated the familiar corridors by touch and memory, His mind raced. Dragons were real. They had been watching over humanity, and now they were going to war. He thought of the collection ships in orbit, filled with paralyzed humans. He thought of the Zarathi, so confident in their superiority. They had no idea what they had awakened. Marcus found the stairwell and began his descent. His blindness was a handicap, but not an insurmountable one. He had worked these corridors for 3 years. His feet knew the way. As he descended, he could already hear the sounds of battle beginning high above. The station shook with impacts that had nothing to do with mining. The emergency shelter was where the dragon had said it would be. Marcus felt for the control panel, input the code by touch. The heavy doors sealed behind him with a reassuring thud. The shelter had its own air supply, food, and water for weeks. He was safe. He found a bench and sat down, trying to process everything that had happened. Yesterday, he had been the last free human on Kepler 442b, hunted and alone. Today, he had learned that humanity had protectors, ancient beyond imagining, who were rising to defend their charges. The station shook again, more violently this time. Marcus could only imagine what was happening in orbit. The Zarathi had expected to find one last human to add to their collection. Instead, they had found something from their nightmares, or perhaps from humanity's dreams. In the darkness of his blindness, Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. He was still blind, still trapped, still the only human on the planet. But he was no longer alone. Humanity had never been alone, and somewhere in the skies above, dragons were teaching the Zarathi the price of hunting the children of Earth. The emergency shelter shook like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Marcus pressed his palms against the cool metal walls, feeling every vibration that rippled through the mining station. In his darkness, each tremor painted a picture of the battle raging above. 3 hours had passed since the dragon left, 3 hours of impacts, explosions, and sounds that defied explanation. Sometimes the shelter's air recyclers would carry down a hint of ozone, or the metallic tang that Marcus had learned meant Zarathi weapons fire. But mixed with it was something else, the scent of storms and ancient power. Marcus had found the shelter's emergency supplies by touch: water, food, medical equipment. His fingers traced the familiar shapes, building a mental map of his resources. The blindness was frustrating, but not debilitating. Humans adapted. It's what they did. The communication system crackled to life, making Marcus jump. He hadn't expected it to work. The Zarathi had been thorough in disabling most systems, but the voice that came through wasn't human or Zarathi. "Marcus Chen!" the dragon's voice rumbled through the speakers. "The station's upper levels are compromised. Remain sealed." "What's happening up there?" Marcus called out, hoping the system was two-way. "The Zarathi brought 3 harvest ships. They expected to load their final prize and depart." There was satisfaction in the dragon's tone. They were unprepared for resistance. Another impact shook the shelter, stronger than the others. Marcus heard the distant shriek of tearing metal. "Are you winning?" "Winning implies a contest," the dragon replied. "This is not a contest. This is a reckoning." The communication cut out with a burst of static. Marcus was left alone with his thoughts and the continuous rumbling of the battle. He tried to imagine what it looked like. A creature from human mythology battling advanced alien spacecraft. It seemed impossible, but then again, so did his current situation. Time lost meaning in the darkness. Marcus dozed fitfully, waking to each new explosion or impact. His enhanced hearing, already sharpening to compensate for his lost sight, picked up details he might have missed before. The whine of energy weapons had a desperate quality now. The Zarathi were afraid. He was reaching for another water packet when everything changed. The constant vibration that had been his companion for hours suddenly stopped. The silence was so complete it made his ears ring. Marcus held his breath, straining to hear anything. Then, Through the massive shelter doors came a sound that made his blood run cold. Clicking. Zarathi feet on metal decking. They were in the station. Marcus's hand found the plasma cutter at his belt. He'd grabbed it from where he'd dropped it. A futile gesture, maybe, but better than nothing. The clicking grew closer, accompanied by their liquid speech. How had they gotten past the dragon? The shelter door's locks began to cycle. Marcus backed into the corner, plasma cutter raised. If they wanted him, they'd have to work for it. The heavy doors parted with a hiss of equalizing pressure. "Clever human," a Zarathi voice said, different from the ones before. This one was older, more measured. "Hiding in the deep places, but we always find what we seek." "Your friends found more than they bargained for," Marcus shot back, trying to sound braver than he felt. "The Guardian? Yes, an unexpected variable. But dragons, for all their power, cannot be everywhere at once. While it pursued our harvest ships, we inserted a strike team." The Zarathi entered the shelter. Marcus could hear at least 3 of them. "You remain our prize, Marcus Chen. The last free human of this world." "Not much of a prize," Marcus said. "Your people already blinded me." "A temporary inconvenience. Our collectors will find you fascinating nonetheless. A human who survived both the harvest and a dragon's intervention. You will have stories to tell." They moved closer. Marcus activated the plasma cutter, its heat warming his face. "Stay back." "That tool again," the lead Zarathi said with what sounded like amusement. "Do you know what we are, human? We are the Zarathi Collective. We have harvested 1,000 species, preserved 10,000 worlds worth of knowledge and culture. We are living history, and you resist with a mining tool?" "Sometimes," Marcus said. "The simple tools are the best." He swung the plasma cutter in a wide arc, forcing them to step back. But he knew it was hopeless. He couldn't fight what he couldn't see. They would wear him down, wait for an opening. That's when he heard it. A new sound cutting through the shelter. Not clicking or energy weapons, but something wet and organic, like tearing silk. One of the Zarathi made a strangled noise. "What?" another began, then cut off with a gurgle. The temperature in the shelter dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Marcus's breath came out in clouds he couldn't see but could feel. The lead Zarathi was backing away from something, its movement frantic. "Impossible," it said. "You were with the ships. We tracked you." A new voice answered, different from the first dragon but carrying the same ancient weight. This one was female, Marcus realized, and colder than winter starlight. "You tracked one of us," she said. "Did you think he was alone? Did you think Earth's children had only one guardian per world?" The Zarathi fired its weapon. The energy beam crackled through the frozen air. The dragon laughed, a sound like breaking glaciers. "Fire and ice," she mused. "My brother burns. I freeze. Both serve the same purpose." What followed was brief but decisive. Marcus heard the Zarathi leader try to run. He heard it fail. The sound it made as the cold took it would haunt his dreams. But he felt no sympathy. They had hunted his species like animals. "Marcus Chen," the ice dragon said when silence had returned. "You can lower your weapon. The immediate threat has passed." Marcus deactivated the plasma cutter with trembling fingers. "How many of you are there?" "On this world? 3. My brother who burns, myself who freezes, and our sister who commands the storm. We woke when you disturbed our resting places." She moved closer. Where the first dragon had radiated heat, this one was a void of warmth. "May I?" Before Marcus could ask what she meant, he felt a touch on his forehead. It was so cold it burned, but somehow not unpleasant. The darkness that had claimed his vision flickered. For just a moment he saw, really saw. The dragon before him was serpentine and beautiful, scales like carved ice, eyes like frozen stars. Then the vision faded, and darkness returned. Your sight will return, she promised. But healing takes time. For now, we have more pressing concerns. The captured humans? Indeed. The Zarathi harvest ships are crippled but not destroyed. My brother was enthusiastic in his assault. The human cargo sections remain intact. But the Zarathi crew are attempting to trigger their self-destruct protocols. Marcus's blood ran cold in a way that had nothing to do with the dragon's presence. They'd kill everyone just to spite us? The Zarathi do not accept defeat well. They would rather destroy their prizes than see them freed. But they did not account for us. The dragon moved toward the shelter exit. Can you walk? We have need of human hands. I can walk, Marcus said, then hesitated. But I can't see. How can I help? The harvest ships use neural locks on their containment systems. They can only be opened by the same species they imprison, a safeguard against cargo theft by rival collectors. The dragon's voice carried grim amusement. They never imagined the imprisoned species might have allies. Come. Time is short. Marcus followed the sound of her movement, one hand on the wall. The corridors of the station felt different now, colder, yes, but also charged with possibility. As they walked, the ice dragon spoke. My name is Nethys, since names seem important to your kind. My brother who you met is Piraxis. Our sister, who even now battles the Zarathi fighters above, is Tempestus. Those aren't human names, Marcus observed. No, but they are names humans gave us long ago. Your ancestors were creative in their mythology. They reached what Marcus recognized by its echo as the main hangar. The space was vast, and now it held more than mining equipment. Marcus could hear massive forms breathing, the creak of scales and wings. How? He began. The station's hangar doors were already compromised, Nethys explained. We simply enlarged the opening. Piraxis is here, along with others. Others? Marcus felt his head spinning. How many dragons are there? Across all of humanity's worlds? Few enough to count, many enough to matter. Piraxis's familiar voice rumbled from somewhere above. Marcus Chen. You survived. Good. Barely, Marcus said. Your ice sister had to save me from a Zarathi strike team. Ice sister, Nethys mused. I suppose that works. Brother, the situation? 3 harvest ships, as reported. 2,417 humans in stasis. The Zarathi have barricaded themselves in the command sections and are attempting to override the self-destruct safeguards. Piraxis's voice hardened. They have perhaps 20 minutes before they succeed. Then we move now, a third voice said. Female again. But where Nethys was cold, this one crackled with barely contained energy. The air itself felt electric. I am Tempestus, Marcus Chen, the storm's daughter. My siblings speak well of you. I haven't done anything, Marcus protested. I just survived. Sometimes, Tempestus said, survival is the greatest victory. Now, can you interface with Zarathi technology? Maybe. I worked with some of their systems when we tried to understand their attacks, but I'm blind. We will be your eyes, Nethys said. But only human hands can free human captives. The neural locks are specific. They moved as a group, and Marcus became aware of just how many dragons were present. The hangar held at least a dozen massive forms. Some radiated heat, others cold, still others sparked with electricity or rumbled with the deep sound of moving earth. All the elements of human mythology were represented. Transport incoming, one of them reported. Zarathi Rapid Response Fleet, 17 minutes out. Then we have 16 minutes, Piraxis said. Marcus, you'll need to come with us. Can you manage spaceflight? Do I have a choice? That rumbling laughter again, from multiple throats. There's always a choice, but some choices are easier than others. Marcus felt himself being lifted. Carefully, gently, but lifted nonetheless. Claws that could rend metal held him like precious glass. The sensation of movement, acceleration, but cushioned somehow. His ears popped as pressure changed. "We're in space," he breathed. "In my brother's claws, yes," Nethys confirmed from nearby. "The harvest ships are ahead. Their weapons are targeting us, but—" She made a dismissive sound. "Energy weapons against dragons. They never learn." The next few minutes were a blur of sensations. Marcus felt the heat of weapon impacts, the cold of space, the electric tingle of shields he didn't understand. The dragons moved through the void as easily as through atmosphere, their impossible biology making mockery of physics. Then they were inside something. Artificial gravity took hold, and Marcus found his feet on solid decking again. The air smelled of Zarathi, ozone, and alien fear. "The neural lock panel is to your left," Nethys guided. "3 steps forward, then left, your hand height." Marcus felt his way forward, found the smooth surface of Zarathi technology. It hummed under his fingers, alien but somehow familiar. He'd studied their systems, learned their patterns. "Now what?" "Place your palm flat against it. The system will read your neural pattern, recognize you as human, and release the locks." Paraxis was close, his heat reassuring. "But be ready. The Zarathi know we're here." Marcus pressed his palm against the panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then pain shot up his arm, not harmful, just invasive. The system was reading him, cataloging him, confirming his species. Somewhere in the harvest ship, alarms began to wail. "It's working," he said through gritted teeth. "Zarathi forces converging on our position," Tempestus reported. "I'll hold the corridor." The sounds of battle erupted nearby. Energy weapons, the crack of lightning, Zarathi screams. But Marcus kept his hand pressed to the panel even as the neural scan dug deeper. It wanted to be sure, absolutely certain that he was what he appeared to be. Finally, with a sound like 1,000 locks disengaging at once, the panel flashed green. Throughout the ship, containment pods began to open. 2,417 humans, stolen from their lives, began the process of waking. "It's done," Marcus gasped, pulling his hand back. "The first ship," Nethys corrected. "2 more to go, and the Zarathi fleet draws closer." They fought their way back through the ship. Marcus could only follow, trusting in his guides, as chaos erupted around him. Waking humans, confused and frightened, desperate Zarathi trying to regain control, dragons carving a path through it all. The second ship was harder. The Zarathi had learned, reinforced their positions, but they hadn't counted on the storm dragon's fury. Tempestas tore through their defenses like paper, clearing the way for Marcus to reach another neural panel. Another scan, another release. 3,000 more humans freed. By the time they reached the third ship, the Zarathi rapid response fleet was almost upon them. Marcus could hear the tension in the dragons' voices. They were powerful, but not invulnerable. And there were thousands of human lives at stake. "The command section is too heavily fortified," one of the Earth dragons reported. "They've sealed themselves completely." "And the self-destruct?" Paraxis asked. 3 minutes at most." Marcus's mind raced. 3 minutes to breach fortified positions, reach the neural locks, and free another 2,000 humans. It wasn't enough time. "Is there another way?" he asked. "Some kind of override?" "The neural locks are absolute," Nethys said. "They can only be—" She stopped. "Unless? Unless what?" "The emergency protocols. If the ship believes it's been critically compromised, it dumps all cargo to prevent capture, including living cargo." "That would kill them," Marcus protested. "Spacing 2,000 people. Not if we were ready to catch them," Paraxis interrupted, understanding immediately. "Sister, can you?" Tempestas laughed, wild and free. "Can I catch falling stars? Watch and see. But the ship must believe it's truly dying. No half measures. Leave that to us, one of the Earth Dragons rumbled. We who sleep in stone know how to break foundations. What followed was controlled destruction on a massive scale. The dragons who commanded earth and stone latched onto the harvest ship's hull and began to tear. Not randomly, but with precise knowledge of where to strike. Support struts buckled. Hull plates peeled away like old paint. The ship's automated systems reacted exactly as Nethys had predicted. Faced with imminent destruction, it began emergency cargo dump procedures. Throughout the vessel, containment pods were ejected into space. 2,000 humans, still in stasis, tumbled into the void, and Tempestus was ready. Marcus couldn't see it, but he could feel it. The storm dragon expanded her influence, creating a net of electromagnetic force that caught each pod as gently as a mother catching falling children. The humans floated in a carefully controlled bubble of energy, safe from the vacuum, guided toward the intact sections of the harvest fleet. "Zerathi fleet entering weapon range," someone reported. "Then it's time to leave," Pyraxis decided. "All humans recovered?" "All 6,417, Nethys confirmed, "plus our guide." She touched Marcus's shoulder. "You did well, Marcus Chen. Without you, they would all be lost." "I just put my hand on some panels," Marcus said, exhausted. "You survived when all others fell. You trusted when everything you knew said dragons were myth. You acted when action was needed." Pyraxis lifted him again. "Never underestimate the power of being in the right place at the right moment." The flight back to Kepler 442b was a fighting retreat. The dragons carried what humans they could, while the harvest ships, now under the control of freed human crew, limped along behind. The Zerathi fleet pursued, firing weapons that lit the void with deadly beauty. But the dragons of Earth were aroused now. As they flew, more appeared. Dragons of shadow who swallowed light. Dragons of void who bent space itself. Dragons of every element and aspect humanity had ever imagined, all united in defense of their charges. The Zerathi fleet, faced with legends made real, began to falter. Some ships turned back, others pressed on, only to meet fates that would become warnings in Zerathi databases for generations to come. By the time they reached Kepler 442b, the immediate threat had passed. The mining station, battered but not broken, received its lost children. 6,000 humans who had thought their stories ended were given new chapters. Marcus stood in what remained of the observation deck, still blind but no longer alone. Around him, he could hear the voices of the rescued, crying, laughing, planning, the sounds of life returning to a place that had known too much death. "What happens now?" he asked Pyraxis, who had stayed close. Now your people rebuild. Stronger, wiser, and knowing you are not alone in the dark." The dragon shifted, and Marcus felt the heat of his regard. "The Zerathi will spread word of what happened here. Others will come to test the truth of it. And you'll stop them? We will do what we have always done. Watch. Wait. And when watching and waiting are not enough, we will remind the universe that humanity has guardians." "But why?" Marcus had to ask. "Why do you protect us?" Pyraxis was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ages. "Because long ago, when we were young and proud and foolish, we nearly destroyed ourselves. A small group of humans, primitive by your current standards, found one of our wounded. They could have feared us, hunted us, driven us away. Instead, they helped. They showed us that strength without compassion is mere violence, that power without purpose is waste." The dragon paused, and Marcus could almost feel him looking back through time. "We swore then that as they had guarded us in our weakness, we would guard them in theirs. As they had shown us mercy, we would be their mercy in turn. The promise has never been broken." "And it never will be?" "Never," Peraxis confirmed. Though the stars grow cold and the universe ends, the last dragon will stand guard over the last human. This is the promise. This is the way. Marcus nodded, understanding flooding through him. Humanity's survival hadn't been luck. It had been the fruit of an ancient kindness, repaid across millennia. And now, as humanity took its first steps into a hostile galaxy, they would not walk alone. The dragon spread his wings, preparing to return to the stars where more Zarathe ships might lurk. But before he left, he had one more thing to say. Your sight will return within days. Nethys's touch has ensured it. When it does, look up at the stars without fear. Each point of light might hide danger, yes, but hidden among them are friends you've forgotten you had. With that, the dragon of fire launched himself through the shattered window, joining his kin in their eternal watch. Marcus remained, surrounded by the voices of 6,000 saved souls, and smiled into his temporary darkness. The last human of Kepler 442b was the last no longer, and humanity's guardians were awake. 7 days had passed since the dragons revealed themselves. Marcus sat in the medical bay, a bandage wrapped around his eyes, waiting. The doctor, one of the rescued humans who'd turned out to be a skilled physician, spoke quietly nearby. The neural pathways are regenerating exactly as the dragon predicted, Dr. Sarah Chen said. No relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname, but they'd laughed about it. Whatever that creature did, it's unlike any healing I've ever seen. Your optic nerves are literally rebuilding themselves. How much longer? Marcus asked. Could be minutes, could be hours. The process seems to have its own timeline. She paused. Are you ready for this? Was he? Marcus had lived in darkness for over a week now. In that time, he'd learned to navigate by sound, touch, and smell. He'd discovered depths of hearing he never knew existed. Part of him worried that sight might feel overwhelming now. I'm ready, he said anyway. The station had transformed in 7 days. The rescued humans, led by those with military and organizational experience, had turned chaos into order with remarkable speed. Everyone had a role, everyone contributed, and everyone knew the truth. Dragons were real, and they protected humanity. The communication systems, painstakingly repaired, had already sent word to Earth and the other colonies. The response had been predictable: disbelief, demands for proof, accusations of mass hallucination. Until the first dragon had appeared on Earth itself, landing in the middle of the United Nations Plaza in New York. Marcus had listened to the broadcast, painting pictures in his mind from the shocked reporter's words. A dragon of earth and stone, patient as a mountain, had delivered a simple message. Your children called. We answered. The universe has been put on notice. The political implications were still rippling outward. Some groups claimed it was a hoax. Others saw religious validation. Scientists demanded to study dragon biology. The military wanted to know if they could be weaponized. And through it all, the dragons remained patient, appearing when needed, vanishing when not, keeping their own counsel. Marcus, Dr. Chen said suddenly. Your eyes. They're moving under the bandages. He felt it too. A tingling, like circulation returning to a sleeping limb. Then faintly through the bandages, light. Just a dim glow, but after absolute darkness, it might as well have been a supernova. Let me remove these, Dr. Chen said, her hands gentle but efficient. Layer by layer, the bandages came away. The light grew stronger, shapes beginning to form. And then Marcus blinked, and the world rushed back in a torrent of color and form. The medical bay's white walls, Dr. Chen's concerned face, the window showing Kepler 442b's rust-colored landscape. Everything was sharp, vivid, almost too much. How many fingers? Dr. Chen held up her hand. 3, Marcus said, then laughed. It came out slightly hysterical. I can actually see. She ran through a battery of tests: visual acuity, color perception, peripheral vision. Everything came back not just normal, but better than before. Whatever Nethys had done, she'd improved on the original design. Remarkable, Dr. Chen muttered. If we could understand this process, the implications for medicine. They won't teach us, Marcus said with certainty. Not yet. Humanity has to earn that knowledge. Dr. Chen looked like she wanted to argue, then nodded slowly. You're probably right. We're children to them, aren't we? Children they're willing to die for, Marcus corrected. That has to count for something. He was discharged with warnings to report any changes in vision. Marcus ignored the advice to rest, instead heading for the observation deck. It had been repaired with salvaged materials from the Zarathi ships, the new windows offering an even better view. The deck wasn't empty. Commander Jessica Park, the highest-ranking military officer among the rescued, stood at the windows. She'd taken charge of the station's defense, such as it was. Marcus had worked with her several times during his week of blindness. Chen, she acknowledged without turning. Heard your sight came back. Just now. He joined her at the window. It's good to see again. What's it like? Park asked. Being the one who freed us all? I put my hand on some panels. The dragons did the rest. Park snorted. And Neil Armstrong just took a little stroll. History will remember it differently. She pointed to the sky. Speaking of dragons. Marcus looked up and gasped. The daylight sky of Kepler 442b, usually empty save for the binary suns, was filled with shapes. Dragons wheeled and danced through the thin atmosphere, their scales catching the light like living prisms. He counted at least 30, all different, all magnificent. They've been doing that for hours, Park said. Best we can figure, it's a gathering. Dragons from other worlds coming to see what happened here. Or coming to prepare for what's next, Marcus suggested. What's next is the hard part. Park's expression was grim. Earth's governments are in chaos. Half want to worship the dragons, half want to figure out how to control them. The colonies are split between celebrating and panicking. And then there's the rest of the galaxy. The Zarathi won't give up, Marcus agreed. They've been collecting species for who knows how long. We just became the first to successfully resist. No, Park corrected. We became the first to have help resisting. There's a difference. They watched the aerial display in companionable silence. Then Park spoke again. There's going to be a meeting. Representatives from the rescued colonists. We need to figure out how to move forward, and everyone agrees you should be there. I'm not a leader, Marcus protested. You're the one who made first contact. The one they saved when they could have stayed hidden. That makes you significant whether you like it or not. Park smiled slightly. Besides, you're the only one who's actually had a conversation with them. The meeting convened that afternoon in the station's largest intact space. Over 100 people crowded in, representatives of the various groups that had formed among the rescued. Scientists, soldiers, civilians, all united by their shared experience, but divided on what it meant. We need to establish formal diplomatic relations, insisted Dr. Harrison Webb, who'd emerged as the leader of the scientific contingent. These beings represent a leap in our understanding of biology, physics, everything. We must engage them systematically. They're not lab rats, countered Maria Santos, speaking for the religious groups that had formed. They're our guardians, our protectors. We should show gratitude, not curiosity. Gratitude doesn't rebuild our defenses, Commander Park interjected. The Zarathi will be back. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but they'll come. We need to be ready. The arguments went in circles. How do you plan for a future where myths are real? How do you integrate ancient protectors into modern society? Marcus listened, saying little, until finally someone asked him directly. You've spoken with them most. Dr. Webb said. What do you think they want? Marcus considered carefully. I think they want what they've always wanted, to keep their promise, to protect humanity while we grow into whatever we're meant to become. But grow into what? Santos asked. Before Marcus could answer, the temperature in the room plummeted. Frost spread across the windows in fractal patterns. Nethys materialized in the center of the gathering, her ice-scale form somehow fitting into a space that should have been too small. Into a species worthy of the stars, the ice dragon answered. One that protects rather than conquers, that preserves rather than collects. The room erupted in gasps, questions, some people backing away while others pressed forward. Nethys waited with infinite patience for quiet to return. Why now? Dr. Webb finally asked. Why reveal yourselves now? Because hiding served its purpose, and that purpose has ended. Nethys's star-frozen eyes swept the room. For millennia, we let you believe you were alone. It made you strong. It made you innovative. It made you reach for the stars with your own hands. But it also made us vulnerable, Park said. Yes, and when that vulnerability nearly cost you everything, the time for hiding ended. The dragon shifted slightly. You want to know what comes next? We will tell you, but you may not like the answer. Tell us, Marcus said. War, Nethys said simply. The Zarathi are one of many collector species. Your resistance here, your rescue of their prizes, has sent ripples through the galaxy. Some will come to test humanity's new guardians. Others will come seeking alliance. Still others will come in fear, hoping to destroy you before you become a threat. The room fell silent, processing this. But you'll protect us, Santos said, almost pleading. We will do what we have always done. We will guard. But guardians cannot fight every battle, cannot make every choice. Nethys focused on Marcus. You asked what we want humanity to become. We want you to become a species that no longer needs guardians. That could take centuries, Webb protested. We are patient, Nethys replied. But the universe is not. You have perhaps a generation before the greater powers take notice. Use that time wisely. Will you teach us? Marcus asked. Some things, the healing arts, as you've experienced, certain defensive technologies, but not everything. Not yet. The dragon began to fade. A child given a sword often cuts themselves. A child who forges their own blade learns respect for its edge. She vanished, leaving only rapidly melting frost as proof of her presence. The room exploded in discussion again, but Marcus found himself thinking. A generation to prepare, to grow, to become something more than humanity had ever been. Over the following weeks, patterns emerged. The dragons appeared when needed, to heal critical injuries, to provide warnings of incoming threats, to offer cryptic guidance. But they refused to solve humanity's problems wholesale. When a group of colonists argued about resource distribution, no dragon appeared to arbitrate. When engineers struggled to adapt Zarathi technology, no dragon offered blueprints. They're teaching us by not teaching us, Marcus observed to Park one evening. They were watching the sunset from the observation deck, a ritual that had become common. Forcing us to stand on our own, Park agreed, even if they're standing behind us. The Zarathi sent another probe today, Marcus said. It turned back 50,000 kilometers out. The dragons? Probably, though we're not supposed to rely on that. Marcus smiled. Dr. Webb's team thinks they've figured out basic Zarathi shield technology. We might be able to protect ourselves from probes soon. And in a generation? In a generation, maybe we'll be the ones sending probes back. The communication system chimed. Another message from Earth, probably. The planet was still adjusting to the new reality. Some nations had tried to demand the dragons submit to their authority. The dragons had responded by simply not appearing in those nations anymore. The message was clear. Respect was earned, not demanded. Marcus, the communication tech called. "You'll want to hear this." They crowded around the console as a message played, not from Earth, but from farther out. The translation was rough but understandable. "This is the Valith Confederation. We have monitored the events in your system. The return of the Star Guardians was unexpected. We wish to open diplomatic channels with the species they protect. Please respond." "Star Guardians?" Park muttered. "Is that what other species call them?" "Apparently we're not the only ones with legends," Marcus said. He thought of Paraxis's story, of ancient humans helping wounded dragons. How many other species had similar tales? How many had forgotten, as humanity had? More messages followed over the days. The Carrick Assembly, offering trade. The Thorian Empire, demanding explanation. The Melody Collective, seeking confirmation that the ancient pact holders had truly returned. Each message painted a picture of a galaxy that had thought the dragons myth and was now scrambling to adjust. And through it all, the dragons watched. Marcus would sometimes catch glimpses of them, a shadow passing over the sun, a heat shimmer that moved wrong, frost on windows that faced away from weather. They were always there, just out of sight, ready but not interfering. 3 months after the rescue, Marcus stood in a room that hadn't existed before. The council chamber, they called it. Representatives from Kepler 442b, Earth, and the other colonies attended via quantum communication. The first true human interstellar government was being born out of necessity. "The Zarathi have formally protested to the Galactic Commerce Guild," the representative from Mars reported. "They claim we used prohibited weapons in the form of the dragons." "The Guild's response?" asked Earth's senior diplomat. "They're demanding proof that dragons exist and are allied with humanity. If we can't provide it, they'll side with the Zarathi. And if we can? Then humanity becomes a recognized power in galactic politics, with all the responsibilities that entails." Marcus felt the temperature shift before anyone else. 3 dragons materialized in the chamber: Paraxis, Nethys, and Tempestus. Fire, ice, and storm, the 3 who had saved Kepler 442b. "We will appear before this guild," Paraxis announced. "Once, let them see that the guardians of Earth stand with Earth's children. After that, humanity speaks for itself." "Why help us with this?" the Earth diplomat asked. "Because," Tempestus said with lightning in her voice, "the galaxy must learn that humanity is not prey. You are not specimens to be collected. You are not resources to be harvested." Her form crackled with power. "You are the children of dragons. Let them remember what that means." The meeting that followed was broadcast across human space. The Galactic Commerce Guild, a body humanity had only just learned existed, convened a special session. When Pyraxis materialized in their central chamber, a space station orbiting a neutral star, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. Species that had built their civilizations on the assumption that dragons were extinct suddenly faced a living legend. The Zarathi representative literally cowered. Others fled. Still others fell to what could only be called worship. Pyraxis spoke simply. "Humanity is under our protection. They always have been. They always will be. But do not mistake our protection for their weakness. Test them and face them. Hunt them and face us." The Guild's ruling was unanimous. Humanity was recognized as a sovereign galactic power, with all rights and protections that entailed. The Zarathi were censured for attacking a protected species, and everyone was put on notice. The dragons were real, and they remembered their promises. But with recognition came responsibility. Humanity couldn't hide behind its guardians forever. Trade agreements needed negotiating, borders needed establishing, alliances needed forging, and all of it had to be done by human hands and human minds. Marcus found himself appointed to the newly created Department of Draconic Relations, tasked with being a liaison between humanity and its guardians. It was a job that mostly involved explaining to people why the dragons wouldn't solve all their problems. "They're not our servants," he found himself saying repeatedly. "They're not our gods. They're our guardians. There's a difference." The dragons, for their part, began to fade back into the background. They still appeared when truly needed. When a colony ship's drive failed in deep space, a dragon of the void appeared to carry it to safety. When a plague threatened to wipe out a frontier world, a dragon of life brought healing. But for day-to-day challenges, humanity was on its own, and humanity rose to meet those challenges. The shared trauma of nearly being collected had unified the species like nothing else could have. Resources flowed to where they were needed. Technology advanced in leaps as humans reverse-engineered what they could from Zerathi ships, and slowly, carefully, humanity began to build its own defenses. 1 year after the rescue, Marcus stood once again in the observation deck of Kepler 442b. But now he wasn't alone. The station had grown into a small city, a hub for mining operations and increasingly diplomatic missions. Ships from a dozen species docked at the expanded port, all come to trade with the dragon-protected humans. "You think they're proud of us?" someone asked. Marcus turned to find a young woman, maybe 20, wearing the uniform of the new Human Defense Force. "Who?" "The dragons. You think they look at all this and feel proud?" Marcus considered. Through the window, he could see human ships patrolling alongside the occasional glimpse of a dragon. Working together, but independently. "I think they're satisfied. We're growing, learning, standing on our own feet even when we know they'll catch us if we fall." "My grandmother used to tell stories," the woman said, "about dragons who protected villages. Everyone thought she was making them up." "Turns out grandmothers know things," Marcus said with a smile. "Lieutenant Torres," she introduced herself. "I'm part of the new early warning system. We're trying to build sensors that can detect threats before the dragons have to intervene." "How's it going?" "Slowly, but last week we spotted a Zerathi probe before it was neutralized. First time human technology detected a threat first." She stood a little straighter. The dragon on patrol actually seemed pleased. Marcus nodded. That was the pattern. Every small step toward self-sufficiency was met with approval. Every innovation that reduced humanity's dependence on protection was encouraged. The dragons wanted humanity to succeed on its own terms. A chime from his personal communicator interrupted his thoughts. "Emergency council meeting." Marcus sighed. The galaxy, it seemed, never stopped presenting new challenges. The meeting was about a new threat. The Khazari hegemony, an aggressive species from the galaxy's edge, had declared humanity's protection by dragons an affront to natural selection. They were mobilizing a fleet. "How long?" someone asked. 6 months, maybe less, the intelligence officer reported. "They're serious about this. They see humanity as weak, hiding behind myths." "Then we proved them wrong," Commander Park said. She'd been promoted to Admiral of the Human Defense Force. "Not by calling our guardians, but by standing on our own." "Can we?" The question came from a colony representative. "Their technology is decades ahead of ours." "Their technology is ahead of where we were," Park corrected. "But we've had a year of reverse engineering Zerathi systems, a year of knowing we're not alone, a year of unity." She looked around the room. "And if we truly can't handle it, then yes, the dragons will intervene. But shouldn't we try first?" The vote was unanimous. Humanity would face the Khazari fleet themselves, calling on the dragons only if absolutely necessary. It was time to test how far they'd come. The months of preparation were intense. Every human world contributed. Scientists worked around the clock to improve weapons and shields. Engineers built ships with hybrid human Zerathi technology, and through it all, the dragons watched silently, neither helping nor hindering. Marcus found himself on the bridge of humanity's flagship, the UHS Resilience, when the Khazari fleet arrived. 300 ships, each a marvel of hostile engineering, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. "All ships report ready," the tactical officer announced. Humanity had managed to assemble 50 ships. Not great odds, but better than the 0 they would have had a year ago. "Message from the Khazari commander," the communications officer said. "They're demanding we stand down and accept natural judgment." "Natural judgment," Admiral Park muttered. "Tell them humanity passes its own judgments now." The battle began as badly as expected. Khazari weapons were powerful, their shields strong. But human ships were nimble, their crews motivated by the knowledge that extinction waited if they failed. And they had learned from the dragons, even if indirectly. Where the Khazari expected static defense, humans flowed like water. Where they expected fear, humans showed determination. And where they expected to face a weak species propped up by legends, they found a species that had learned from the best protectors in the galaxy. The tide turned when the UHS Thunder's Cry, commanded by the same Lieutenant Torres Marcus had met, executed a maneuver that shouldn't have been possible. She flew her ship directly through a Khazari battleship's shield bubble, a move that would have been suicide with purely human technology. But the hybrid Zarathi systems held just long enough for her to deliver a crippling blow from inside their defenses. "How?" the Khazari commander demanded over open channels. "How are you doing this?" "Because we learned," Admiral Park responded. "We learned from our failures. We learned from our enemies. And yes, we learned from our guardians. But these are our ships, our tactics, our victory." The Khazari fleet, faced with losses they hadn't expected and resistance they couldn't break, began to retreat. But as they turned to flee, space itself seemed to ripple. Every dragon in the system materialized at once, forming a barrier between the Khazari and their escape route. "You came to test the children of Earth," Paraxis's voice echoed across all channels. "You have your answer. They do not need us to defeat you, but they have us anyway. Remember that, and choose your future actions wisely." The Khazari fled, their threat ended not by dragon fire, but by human courage, and across human space, a celebration began, not just for the victory, but for what it represented. Humanity had faced a galactic power and won. Not by hiding behind their guardians, but by standing beside them. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Resilience as the fleet returned to Kepler 442b. Through the windows, he could see dragons flying alongside human ships, a sight that still took his breath away even after a year. "We did it," Torres said, joining him. She was a captain now, her heroic action having earned a swift promotion. "We actually did it." "We did," Marcus agreed. "But this is just the beginning." "Beginning of what?" Marcus thought of the messages still coming in from across the galaxy, species seeking trade, alliance, or conflict, a universe that had thought humanity insignificant now watching with keen interest. And through it all, the dragons maintaining their vigil, ready to protect but eager to see humanity protect itself. "The beginning of humanity's real journey into the stars," he said. "Not as children hiding behind guardians, but as partners standing alongside them." In the distance, Paraxis' barrel rolled between two ships, leaving trails of fire that sparkled in the void. It might have been a salute. It might have been joy. It might have been pride. With dragons, Marcus had learned, it was often all three. The last human of Kepler 442b was last no more. The scared survivor who had hidden in darkness was gone. In his place stood someone who had seen the worst the galaxy could offer and the best humanity could become. Someone who had learned that sometimes the greatest strength was knowing when you didn't have to stand alone. And as the fleet docked and the crews disembarked to a hero's welcome, Marcus couldn't help but smile. The Zerathi had come to collect humanity. Instead, they had awakened something far more precious, the knowledge that humanity's story was not one of isolation, but of connection, not of weakness, but of growth. The dragons had kept their promise. Now it was humanity's turn to prove worthy of it. And looking at the young faces of the crew around him, at the determination and hope in their eyes, Marcus knew they would. The stars were vast and full of danger. But humanity would face them with courage, with wisdom, and with the knowledge that somewhere in the dark, dragons were watching. Not because humanity was weak, but because they were worth protecting. And perhaps someday, when humanity had grown enough, they would be the ones doing the protecting. The children of Earth becoming guardians in their own right, continuing the cycle of protection and growth that had begun with an act of kindness in prehistory. But that was the future. For now, Marcus was content to watch the celebration, to see humans and dragons sharing the same space not as protector and protected, but as partners in the grand adventure of existence. The journey to the stars had truly begun.